Those of you who are here with us live, welcome Megan and Michelle. And if anyone is watching this later on as a recording as well, welcome. For those who don't know me, my name is Laura or Miss Lee, and I'm the mathematics facilitator for our board. So this is actually the last of our parent engagement sessions for this school year. And we thought we'd finish her off with math at home. So I'm going to be telling you all about math tonight. Hopefully nobody's kind of like recoiling at the word math, but we are going to talk about that and some other things tonight. Hopefully I won't go too long, but I do have lots of information that I want to share with you. So what we're going to talk about is what your kids and little ones are learning while they're at school. I just want to touch on that just a little bit since the curriculum did update in 2020. I want to talk about what's really important besides the curriculum in terms of math. I want to tell you about how to redefine success, like what being successful at math really looks like. Talk about what you can do at home and how you can find math really anywhere. And then a little bit about social emotional learning in math too. So as I mentioned, the curriculum was updated in 2020. So not too long ago, unfortunately, a little bit in the middle of the pandemic, but that's okay. We're still making do and we're still pushing forward. For those in kindergarten, their report card is a little bit different, but what it used to look like for grade 1 to grade 8 was 5 different strands and 5 different report card marks previously. When they updated the curriculum, there's now 6 strands, like you can see here, and the math mark that goes on a report card for grade 1 through 8 is actually only 1 mark now. It's not broken down by the different strands. So if you have any kids in grade 1 through 8, you may have noticed that. These are the new strands. It's going to be a lot of information that I'm going to throw up here, but I don't want you to be overwhelmed by it because really this is kind of basically like what the teachers and staff at schools have to worry about. I just want you to be aware of kind of what they learn from grade 1 through to grade 8. So new with this new updated curriculum is social emotional learning. I'm going to talk more about this afterwards, but basically it's about like mindset and being able to communicate, think positively, cope with challenges. Sometimes math is really hard and we don't want to just give up, right? We want to be able to persevere and be able to figure out some things that we do know and really think critically and creatively. So that's kind of the social emotional strand. Numbers, where they learn all the things about adding and subtracting, multiplying, dividing, fractions, percents, ratios, and integers when they get up to grades 6, 7, and 8. So anything to do with numbers, basically. Algebra, so that's where they talk lots about patterning, all different kinds of patterning. That's where variables come in, like letters in our math. And a new area that they added is actually coding. So the kids seem to really enjoy that. They like the technology and they like being able to, make things on the computer that do what they want it to do. So that's kind of a new, cool added expectation that the ministry has updated. For data, that's like data management where there's graphs and collecting information, mean, median, and mode, probability, things like that. Spatial sense is where they talk about shapes and grids, measurement, so like anything to do with mass or capacity, length, perimeter and area, all that stuff. Talking about time and calendars and also angles within the shapes too. And then financial literacy is actually another additional strand that they added. So students were always learning about money at school, like how to add, subtract, make change, things like that, count coins and bills. But now they've added way more in terms of, when we kind of all go, oh, I wish somebody would have told me that when I was in school. They've added those things, talking about budgets and financial goals and payment methods now that we have e-transfer and nobody hardly writes checks anymore, and talking about borrowing and things like that. So there's a lot of information up here. This is what they learn at school, obviously not all at once and obviously not starting in grade 1 all the way up to grade 8. But this is kind of what they learned through their elementary career. So like I mentioned, I just wanted to tell you so that you knew what was in there, but I don't want you to worry too much about that because basically that's what school is for, is to nail down all of these concepts. What I really want to talk about is like what's important in terms of how we can talk about math at home. So obviously they're talking about math and learning about that at school. If we add in some element of math at home, it really just makes it that much more meaningful and connected for the students and your kids, and it really leads to higher student success. So if you take a look at the chart kind of in the middle there, those are the more important things that I want to talk about tonight. So making math about making connections. Like if you're, especially as students get older and they're learning more complex things, if they're sitting there going, I'm never going to use this, like, why am I learning this? And it kind of stops there. They're not very motivated to, try very hard to learn the concepts because it's not meaningful to them, right? But if we can make a connection from school to home or outside of school and say, maybe it's not exactly what they learned at school, but it's using some problem solving skills that they have developed through solving math problems. Or maybe it's, oh yeah, like I'm going to the grocery store and, I need to pick up this, this, and this. Like, how many do I need? Or do I have enough money? Things like that, making the connections and just talking about math. That's what we're going to talk about tonight, really. So math is about creativity and sense making. It's about making mistakes and actually learning from them. Like, lots of people think that, well, if you're good at math, like you never make a mistake and you just get things really quickly. Well, that's not really the case, because if we never made a mistake, then why are we in class in the first place, right? We obviously don't know everything, and that's why our kids go to school. And even as adults, we still don't know everything. So if that's something that you can kind of relate to your child at home about, is we even still as adults, we make mistakes, but that's okay. That's how we learn from them. And relating that into math, it really helps with that positive mindset, like I talked about in social emotional learning. And depth is more important than speed. It's nice to be fast at things, but just because you're not fast at something doesn't mean you're not good at it or that you don't know how to do it. Sometimes it just takes people longer to do things, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that at all. Asking questions is really important. That's how we learn and find out more, right? And I'm going to play some video clips from someone in a minute too, but basically a lot of our talk this last couple of years has been about, there's not really like a math person. Like you might have heard, or maybe even you think yourself like, oh, I'm not good at math. Like I'm not a math person, but there's not really such a thing. Like if you tried really, really hard, you could probably learn math or be good at math. So it's not really like, oh, I'm not a reader, or like I'm not good at reading. Like you hear more about math than you do anything else. But if you work at it, you can be just as good as anybody else can be, or as good as you want to be, basically. Because math class is about learning, not performing. So really what we want to do is have our kids and students more exposed to math kind of almost everywhere they go. And I'm going to show you how to do that too. But the more exposure they have at school and at home, the more comfortable they become with the math, right? We don't want our kids to see math equations or see numbers or see shapes or whatever and be like, oh, like that, like it scares them almost, right? We want them to feel comfortable with it. Even if they don't fully understand it, that's okay. The more they're exposed to it, the more automatic and comfortable it becomes. And as they get more practice with the math, especially as the math gets harder, it's easier for them to put less energy into actually having to solve that maybe initial math equation. Like, oh, well, okay, I know I figured out this word problem, but what I have to do is 27 plus 59. And if adding 27 plus 59 takes a lot of effort, then it takes away from, well, what does that answer really even mean? So if we can make it a little bit more comfortable and more automatic for them to solve the math part, then the other stuff comes and you can focus your thought process and your energy more on that than actually having to solve the math. So problem solving strategies are super, super important, not just in math, but just kind of in life. Like I say it a lot at home, like, what can we do to solve this problem? This isn't working. Let's try something else. And that's really important in math too. And so that being said, math facts are important and useful. Is it the be all and end all to have all of your facts memorized and you need to know adding and subtracting all the way up to 20 and you need to know all your multiplication tables? I mean, it would be helpful. So I'm not saying don't practice those things, but if it's not working or it's taking a little bit longer to get there, like that's okay. As long as you keep trying and keep working on it, it will come. The more exposure, the more automatic it becomes. Because being good at math doesn't mean that you're fast at it necessarily. It doesn't mean that you never get the wrong answer. It doesn't mean you only use one strategy and that's what you use for the whole time. And it doesn't mean that you only use numbers either. You have to be able to talk about and communicate about what it is that you're doing. So, like I said, we had a presentation from, her name's Vanessa Vicaria, and she's called the Math Guru. She's owns a tutoring studio in Toronto, and she does like math therapy podcasts and all these things. She's given presentations to our students. She's given them before on a similar thing to this, like a parent night. So this is just a really short clip that I wanted to show you about what she had to say about being successful at math really looks like.
Where there's a character that's good at math. Like, can you guys picture a movie where there's a character that's good at math? Like, does something come up for you? So for me, like, does anyone have anything they want to say? You can throw it in the chat if you want. If you can think of a movie or, Rain Man. Oh my God. Yes. That's a good one. Mine is always like Good Will Hunting. Have you guys seen A Beautiful Mind? That's another one. Okay, are we seeing a theme? Like, it's always, first of all, crazed men who are like, their head is so full of equations and they can do everything so fast and so easily that they don't have time for anything else. And like, it just comes so naturally to them and they can see these crazy solutions to problems. We've kind of trickled that into math class where we think being good at math means you're fast. It means you can do stuff in your head without any tools, right? Often kids who get IEPs feel it doesn't matter how much they succeed. They're just never going to be good enough because that's not counted in the definition of being good at math. You know what else being good at math means? I think, I don't believe this, but what I think we think it means, you can memorize, right? You just know equations, like you can just memorize stuff so well, when really that is not being good at math also means you have a creative way of solving a problem. You can pack a car trunk. You can read a map. You can spot patterns and trends that other people might not notice. You can solve a problem that maybe someone else hasn't thought of the solution for. You can put together IKEA furniture. You can put together furniture that's not IKEA furniture. Like, there are so many ways to be good at math, but we focus like so narrowly on these little things. So many of you probably have students or kids who insist they're bad at math. Like, even though, again, like, sorry, Tiffany, I keep bringing you up, but your example was so good. Once you work through the stuff with your daughter, she's like, okay, I can do it. But I wonder if she's thinking, well, being good at math should mean that I don't need to ask for help. It should mean that I can just do it on my own. And we have to help kids redefine that for themselves. Like, I know this is a controversial topic. I do believe we need number sense and we should memorize our times tables. But my math teacher, who has a master's in math, like the one I told you about, always used a calculator, especially for higher level calculations. Like, she knew she obviously had number sense, which I think is the risk. Like, we want kids to have number sense, but at a certain point, like, especially when it gets into high school, I always sort of wonder about the goal of being like, no calculators, and then penalizing kids for getting, an error in line 2 that was a subtraction error that ruins their entire mark. Like, what is the goal of that? So again, like, let's redefine what it means to be good at math. Let's teach kids, like, let's start congratulating kids for things we normally don't. So saying something like, okay, so you didn't technically get the right answer, but that is such a cool way of looking at that problem. What were you thinking? Like things like that can really show the value that they're bringing. Because, we talk so much about STEM careers. What we really need in STEM careers are not people that can memorize formulas and spit out fancy mental calculations. We need people who can think creatively. So we need to foster.
I think it's
you guys picture a movie where there's a character.
There we go. Yeah, so like Vanessa said, hopefully I'm unmuted. Yep. It's not necessarily about the right answer. It's not about being fast. It's about, like, good mathematics is about how you behave when you don't know, not necessarily just knowing how many answers you know. So depending on how your child or your kid is at home, if they get really frustrated when they don't know the answer, don't worry about the answer anymore. Like, it's not about the answer. It's about, okay, well, what can we do? What do you know out of the question? What do you know? What do you know something to do with those numbers or that shape or whatever? Like, think about what they do know as opposed to how much they don't know, right? Turn it around. Math is about becoming a creative thinker, not a calculator. That's why we have calculators. We have calculators on our phone. We have calculators on the computer. Like at some point, it's not really about the calculations anymore, and it's about what you do with those numbers. At a young age, we're not giving, grade 1, 2's calculators and not making them learn how to add. It's still important they know how to add. But as they go, it's more about the problem solving and how do I get there. So something called having a growth mindset is basically flipping all of those things into positives. So instead of saying, this is too hard, or I'm not smart enough, or like, oh, I'm just not doing it, help your kid think, well, I can do hard things. Remember that time when you had to practice 55 times to like ride your bike without training wheels? Or remember how you practice day and night to get your slap shot in hockey down? Like, right? Those kinds of things. They have worked hard before, for sure. So we have to help them realize that it's okay to work hard in math too, and want them to do their best work, whatever that might be. Okay, so I know there's only 2 of you here, but I want to make you do just like a tiny smidge of math, just to kind of show something. So here's our math problem for tonight. Gage went shopping and bought 19 cupcakes, 18 apple pies, and 47 glazed donuts. How many items did he buy all together? So I want to give you just 30 seconds or a minute or whatever. You can try to do it in your head. You can write it down. You can do whatever you need to do. But try to figure out, if he bought 19 cupcakes, 18 apple pies, and 47 glazed donuts, how many did he buy all together? If anyone wants to share their answer, they could type it in the chat. If you don't want to, that's okay too. All right, if you're still working to figure it out, that's okay. I see Megan has an answer in the chat there. Not sure if it was Megan or Aria, but that's okay. Thank you for giving your answer. All right, so if you bought all this junk food, we've got the number 19, we've got the number 18, we've got the number 47. We've hopefully realized that we have to do probably some adding because we're asking how many things all together. So we're trying to figure out the sum. And probably, at least someone probably thought, okay, well, I'm going to line up all of our 2-digit numbers, and with the ones column and the tens column, I'm going to line them all up properly, and I'm going to add the right column first and get 24, and then carry the 2, and then I've got 2 and 1 and 1 and 4 and 8, and okay, so my answer is 84, which is the way that probably most of us were taught to do math, I'm guessing, because we didn't really teach too many other ways previous to, I don't even know when we started teaching different ways, but rather recently. But even within this standard method of adding, so if this was a classroom, or even this is at home, and you're like, okay, we need 19 cupcakes, 18 apple pies, 47 glazed donuts. How many things do we need? If this is the way that your child wants to solve it, great. If they get an answer of 84 and you just say, yeah, okay, great, you got the right answer, like, okay, that's good that they got the right answer, but what did they do to get that? So even within this, lining them up and adding them this way, there's different ways that you could have done it. Like you could add 9 and 8 and get 17, and then add the 7 after that and get 24. But for me, personally, if I was going to do it this way, to me, in my head, I know automatically, for whatever reason, that 8 and 7 is 15. For some reason, that's just stuck in my head, probably from playing crib or something like that. But 8 and 7 is 15. So for me, I don't look at the 9 yet. I go 8 and 7 is 15. And then there's the 9 there. And I think, okay, well, 9's close to 10. So I'm going to take 1 from that 15, give it to the 9 to make 10. And then I have 10 and 14 now. So that makes 24. I put the 4 down below, carry the 2. And then I got 2, 1, 1, and 4. In my head, I put the 2 and the 4 together first because I don't know why. That just makes sense to me. That's 6. And then I just add 2 more to get 8. So even if whatever way you or somebody else does math, if you can explain it kind of like I just did, it makes it that much more, like makes it make sense that much more. And it makes it so that if by chance you're doing a math problem or whatever calculation and you don't get the answer right, but you did all the right things and there was just some error that happened in there where you forgot to add one more, then at least you knew you were doing the right thing and you can communicate that, right? But if you just say, oh, well, I got 84 and leave it at that, no one really knows exactly how you got there or what you did, because there are more than one way to do this, right? Like maybe nobody really thought this way, but 19 and 18 are both kind of close to 20. So if you wanted to make it a little easier, like to do in your head, for example, you could take one from the 47 and give it to the 19 to make 20. And you can give 2 to the 18 to make that 120 also. And then you're left with 44. And then those numbers are a little bit easier to add in your head, or even just even on paper, but those numbers make it a little bit nicer. I call them friendly numbers, or like nice numbers, where they make more sense than 19, 18, and 47, right? So there's all kinds of strategies that we can use and teach kids how to use. We don't want them just using one strategy and sticking with that the whole time. It's great to have strategies and to know how to use them, but sometimes I see it a lot. I tutor and I'm in classrooms and I see it a lot where kids are whatever they like they like the number line, or they like to count on their fingers, or they like whatever it is, and that's totally great, but we can't get stuck on using that. We have to like keep expanding and using that to get further. So even this example on the right here in the purple or pink bubble in the middle, where it's 68 plus 37, like they used a number line down here in the corner, and they started at 68 and then they skip counted by tens 3 times because of the 30, and then went by ones to get 7 more to go 37. So if you have a child who likes using a number line, that's great up to, I don't know, 20, 30, 40, like maybe even 100. But once we start getting beyond the number 100, like, we don't want to start at 68 and then count 37 times all the way up the number line, right? It'll work. It's not a strategy that's not going to work, but it's not effective, and it's more thought process than having maybe let's skip count by tens and then maybe a 2 to get to 100 once we're at 98, right? So there's all kinds of strategies, and we don't want to just get stuck on one. And again, have your child or your student like explain what they did, and then it makes it more solidified for them, and then you can see, oh, okay, I never looked at it that way, but that's a really interesting thing. This is how I looked at it. And then they get exposed to all kinds of different ways of thinking about math, and it just becomes, like I said, more automatic, more natural for them. So I have another clip from Vanessa. It's about, because all of that stuff that we just did, like that can be a lot of work. Let's face it, math is not always easy. It doesn't come naturally to everybody. Not that I really think it comes naturally to anybody, but some people have to work harder in math than others. And so we have to basically convince our kids that hard work is a good thing and that it's worth it and it's something that you can be proud of. So I'll let Vanessa talk. Hold on. I'll mute myself.
So tip number 3 is the one we're probably like, kids these days. So tip number 3 is teaching our kids the value of hard work, which is a tough one, I will say. As someone who owns a company where we hire mostly like Gen Z, like our tutors are pretty young, I've definitely been in so many situations where I'm like, I don't understand why you don't think being late is like a problem. Like I'm not even sure I understand what's going on. So we have an uphill battle for sure with hard work, and I am going to just go ahead and blame TikTok. So there we go. Presentation over. It's TikTok's fault. But for real, social media teaches kids that everything is instant. You put up a post, you get 1 million followers, you're famous all of a sudden, and that's the end. So we do have a battle. I think this is a tough one, but the truth is, for many kids, hard work is required in math class. Like, many kids will have to spend 2 hours on their homework while another kid will have to spend 10 minutes. And I think it's important to empower kids to make the choice to an extent, obviously. I sometimes say to kids, like, if you did math for 5 hours a day, like I'm making up a crazy number, would you be good at math? I say this on my podcast all the time to people who are like, I just couldn't do it. And then I say, well, what if you spent 5 hours a day? And normally they say yes. And I use that as an entry point to be like, okay, so you just told me you think you can do math. Like, you don't know if it'll take 5 hours or 20 minutes, but you believe that you have it in you to do math. And at that point, it's about like, how do we make hard work that's something to not be scared of? So, a few things like, first of all, everyone in the room, again, we're adults, are experts at hard work. Like, especially if you have kids, like, good for you. I don't know how you do it, especially if you're classroom teachers. Like, you are an expert in hard work. So you are better at this than anyone else. It doesn't matter how much you know about math, you know about hard work. So you can really use this to your advantage. So there was a book, I'm going to put it in here in case anyone's looking for a good read. I loved this book, Grit by Angela Duckworth. It is so amazing. She's an ex-math teacher, and the entire book is about how the best skill you can ever teach a student is grit. And grit is basically defined as basically like continually working at something when the going gets tough. Actually, that's kind of what the definition is. And she tells the story about her daughter who does this swimming race. And at the end of the race, she comes out of the water and she's like grinning from ear to ear. And her mom is like, "How was it?" And her response is, "It was so hard," with a giant smile. Like, she's using the word hard as a synonym for fun, basically. Right? And how can we teach kids that pride that comes along with things not coming easy? Right? Like, you can get a 90 on a math test you didn't study for, but it doesn't feel as good as getting a 75 on a test you work your butt on or off for, right? So it's like, how do we do that? So a few things, a few tips. I am like really into like creating moments and experiences around hard work. I know that sounds really weird, but so at the Math Guru, I actually a couple of years ago opened this thing, which was a pop-up study lounge. So I just picture like a yoga studio meets a coffee shop, but like it's a lounge, but the only thing you can do in there is study. And I opened it downtown Toronto and everyone was like, "Who is going to use this?" There was a lineup around the block every day for all of exam season. I could not kick these kids out. They would sit there for 8 hours a day ordering food and like not giving their seat up. They would sit on the floor just to have space because they were so caught up in this idea of like, I'm in this space where I'm going to work hard and everyone around me is working hard, and they were helping each other with things, and they were like, it was this whole like vibe and culture around hard work. And I thought it was really interesting because most people think this is a weird concept, but it happens at my tutoring studio too, where kids just will want to come in, even if they don't have a session, to do work. And it's because they have this place. I mean, I'm sure some of you guys have this, right? Like, maybe you go to a gym, right? Because you can't work out at home. But when you go to the gym, you're like in the vibe of the gym, right? Like, everyone's working out and you have the weights and it's like a whole thing. But if you're at home, like this happened to me for COVID, like I'm completely out of shape because I'm just not motivated to work out at home. Like, I don't have my space and like, so actually, it's a really good analogy. I just came up with that now, but I'm realizing that is exactly what it is. So okay, if you have a classroom, you can totally do this. If you have a home, even if you have a corner of a dining room table, and this was something I talked about a lot during COVID, is having a dedicated workspace for your kid, even if all it is saying, between these hours, this dining room table becomes your office. And like, you put the things on it that your kid needs. You put their computer, you put their pens, you put their glass of water and their like little tea and like a cute cup and their favorite stuffy and whatever. And you're like, you're going to work now. You're going to sit here and you're going to work. And that's all you're doing. And you're in your special space. It will make a huge difference. And for teachers too, so I'm going to say this too, because I don't think I have it written down. One of my biggest things is a timer. I cannot work without a timer. I get really overwhelmed thinking I have to do anything for more than 15 minutes. So in my workstation, I have a timer and I'll be like, all right, for 15 minutes, I'm going to work hard. And I'll like have all my supplies, that I always bring out to my desk so I don't have to go searching for them. And I'll set my timer for 15 minutes. So in a classroom, even you could even, I don't know, Zoom is so hard. I'm sorry for all of you, but like, you could even do something like that as being like, all right, guys, we're going to have for this 15 minutes, we're working hard. We're not working. We're working hard for 15 minutes. I want to give it your all. And kids will be a little more into doing that when it's a short amount of time and when they kind of get into the spirit of being like, all right, like I'm going to work hard. Like, and so you want to build that muscle in them that they get excited about it, that they feel really good about themselves after. Like, talk to them about how it feels and also reward hard work. So tip number
All right. So I would say, like, I love all the ideas that Vanessa said about having a timer and having a special workplace and rewarding hard work. If they come home with homework, or even if they don't, even if you just ask your kids, like, what did you do in math today? Or what did you do in school today? And they sit for 5 minutes and show you what they did. Like, even that little amount of something is really going to help them, because then it makes that connection, like we were talking about. Bring school home and home to school, and it just solidifies all of that for them. But I don't, especially when they're young, like I know Megan's got a young daughter at home, and Michelle, it looks like you have young kids at home too. Like, that wasn't really meant for the younger ones. Like, Vanessa has a tutoring studio where she's got high school kids and kids in the upper grades. So it's more for that kind of thing. But what you can do at home is those things, but also just generally bringing math in kind of wherever you can. And maybe you don't think about it, but I'm going to hopefully give you some ideas of how you can do that, where it doesn't really seem like math. And it's not like, oh, let's sit down and solve this problem, but it's bringing math problem or math ideas into everyday life. So I don't know about you guys, but at my house, we play games as often as we can. We like playing games, board games, card games. For Easter, we made like what's it called? Like an escape room where they had to find an Easter gift that was left for them. So any way that you can get, even if you're busy making dinner or whatever, and there's siblings at home, set them down with a card game or a board game or a bingo game, or have them make up a secret code where each letter is represented by a number or a picture, or just anything that kind of gets their brains going and gets some sort of like numbers or shapes or problem solving working through their brain. If they love video games, like, see if they can do some coding. Get out a puzzle, work through some logic puzzles, kind of like Sudoku or like any of those types of things. Um, in any of your everyday activities, like if you're cooking or baking, that's great for fractions or just even measuring or counting. In sports, you can find it in statistics or just like the score or timing or anything like that. Money and budgeting. If you're going to the store, talk about how much money you need to have. Talking about time, like how long something's going to take or when it might be over. Reading the clock. Talking about scheduling, same kind of idea, like elapsed time. So like, how much time is it going to take for us to do this? Or what time do you think we'll get home if we have soccer practice tonight, and then soccer practice is an hour and it takes us 10 minutes to get home? Or just anything, any little thing like that. If you're planning an event like a birthday party or going to the cabin and you need to collect some supplies up, like help them or get them to help you count or pack the vehicle or the trailer or the boat or whatever it is. Talk about the temperature outside. What is it like here? What is it like somewhere else? Is that warmer or colder? By how much? Even measuring anything, like if they're building something or they want to paint their room or anything like that, where they can do measurement. If you're going for a walk or a drive, have them point out some shapes that they see at the park or in houses while they're driving by. Get them to do some chores at home and figure out if they can earn some points or some money if you want, or like whatever, anything really that is going to get them thinking and problem solving and doing something to do with like numbers or shapes or patterns. Like make an art project with patterns, or go put all your toys in lay them out in a color pattern or a size pattern or anything. You can find math just about anywhere. And I don't want it to seem like, okay, now you have this huge list of things you have to go home and do, and it just seems like so overwhelming. Like, pick one thing that you want to try to mention tomorrow. Like, okay, yeah, okay, maybe tomorrow we have soccer tomorrow, so maybe I'll have them keep track of how many kids there are on the field, or just anything. And then the more that you do it and the more that you kind of think about it to get them thinking about it, it will come. You'll see math everywhere. So I've just got some pictures to kind of go along with this. If your kids are on devices and they like watching videos, we use these in classes at school, but like there's this one I think is 8 seconds long, and it gives some math information in it, and then they kind of have to, it lends itself really nicely to figuring out some more math. So I'm just going to mute it because it's just a dog popping balloons. But there's this little dog at the bottom there popping all those balloons, and it's giving us the time, and it's telling us how many balloons. It lends itself nicely to how long do you think it will take to pop all the balloons? How many balloons do you think there are? Right? If they're scrolling through and they find pictures, this random picture of like baby growth and pizza and fractions, right? Count how many slices there are. If the slices all look the same, like what's happening to the baby? If it's movie night at home and they're getting a snack ready, tell them that they can have, I don't know, 3 times 5 worth like pieces of candy in their snack. And they're probably looking like, pardon? Like, well, count by groups of 5 and figure out how many candies you can have in your bowl. Or if they're older, like the ratio of chocolate to candy has to be 2 to 1. Or if you're going to the park, look for some shapes. If you're at the grocery store with them and you see this big display of peppers or whatever it is, it's and you say like, how many peppers do you think there are? Well, you don't have to stand there and count them all, but what number would be like way too big? Like, it can't be this number. What number would be too small? What number might be in between that this could be, right? And you never actually have to know the answer. It's not really about actually how many peppers there are. It's just about that math talk, if you will, and getting your brain thinking about it, right? If you're reading a book before bed and they've got a shelf full of books, how many books do you think are on your shelf? Again, you don't have to sit there and count them all, but what would be a reasonable number to guess are there? Do you think there's more small books or big books or skinny books or chunky books, right? Like pretty much anywhere you look, you can find something. It's just a matter of seeing it and maybe bringing it up once in a while. I gotta skip this video again. There we go. If they're into sports, they like statistics within teams or players. Like if you really want, you can calculate how big the surface areas of the arena or the rink or whatever. Like sports are huge. If they're into art or nature, look for lines of symmetry, look for patterns. Again, if you're going camping or you need to gather up some supplies, maybe figure out how much they're going to cost. If they like being outside and they find some pine cones, well, I found 2 pine cones, then I found 1 more. How many pine cones do I have now? They're playing with their Doc McStuffin toy. How many different outfits can they make, right? If your kids are a bit older, darts are a really, really great way. I know throwing sharp objects is not recommended for young kids, but if they're a bit older and you trust them to throw darts, the math is really, really amazing. There's singles, doubles, and triples in darts, and it makes them come way more automatically the more that they throw darts. Again, not for young children. If they love Disney movies, find things in there like how many times did we see this character, or talk about when the movies were made and how long ago that was. If they're into space, or if they like cards but you don't want to play, like I think these are Uno cards, but you don't want to play Uno that night, take some cards and do something else with them. Make 3-digit numbers and figure out which one's bigger. Add the cards together. I don't know how many of you have done an escape room like in person. I know they have some in Thunder Bay, I believe. I'm not sure anywhere else, but there are virtual ones also that I've done them in classrooms before, where you can do them on the computer and they're free, and they're, you solve the puzzles. It's not quite the same as in person, of course, but it's another way to just kind of get your brain thinking and going. Now that we're somewhat finally getting some nicer weather out, if you're going for ice cream or whatever, have them count out the coins that they might need in order to buy their own ice cream or popsicle or whatever. This is from, I think, Kindness Week, where it was, if I'm kind to 3 people, and then those 3 people are kind to 3 people each, and then those people are kind, what did my kindness to 3 people do? So you can really find it pretty much anywhere. Just like I said, the more you start talking about it, the more it will come, and the easier it will come for just it being natural to talk about, because it's all around us. We just don't always realize that it is. All right, so I'm going to start wrapping it up because I know we are getting a little bit into our time here, but I just wanted to touch on this new addition to the curriculum, mostly because it is this thing that I think would be most effective to work on at home. We can teach them this at school too, but we have all the curriculum concepts to cover as well, right? So talking about having a positive mindset and attitude towards math, and doing all these things that I just mentioned is going to help with that. But specifically saying things like, it's okay not to know, or what do you think you could do if you don't know? And just saying, well, just because something is hard doesn't mean we're just going to give up, right? What can we do instead? And being okay with failure. It's how we learn and grow. Everybody fails all the time. We just don't maybe realize it. Learning to communicate effectively, so being able to explain their thinking, doing those math talks are really, really going to help. And persevering through those challenges. Start with what you know. If you don't know how to solve the problem, no worries. What do you know? Can you pick out something in the problem that you do know? Can you think of something that you might be able to try? Right? You won't know until you try. And being able to think critically and creatively. And if you're a good role model for them in terms of these things, even if you yourself don't love math and it's not your thing, even if you can just kind of talk about that and say, you know what, I don't really love math, or I don't think I'm very good at math either, but I'm going to try this, or I'm going to do this, or this is how I thought about it. How did you think about it? That's where we need to start. So in terms of just a couple of things that if you were looking for something for your kids to do at home, or if you were looking for some resources, these two, I'm going to leave it up for a second if you want to take a picture of it, of the screen or whatever, and you could look them up afterwards. These two over here, these two resources are kind of guides for you as parents of just maybe some ideas or things that you can think about. Lots of things I already said, but if you just wanted to do some light reading in your spare time, I'm sure you have tons of that, right? Just kidding. And this, all these games and logic puzzles over here on the side, I have them all as links. You obviously can't click them, but if you look up those names, they will come up. I don't know how many of you do Wordle. I know that was been a big thing lately, but there's actually one called Nerdle, and it's a math one. So you have to figure out the math equation in the same way that you do the words. It comes up with purple if it's in there, but not in the right spot, black if it's not in there. And lots of these some of them are for younger kids as well. Kakuma is adding and multiplying. Math Playground has all grades and different things. Pink Cat Games is really, really cool. I'm actually going to show you Pink Cat Games because there's younger kids in here and I want you to see this. So it doesn't really look that exciting at the beginning, and there's not just math in here. There's anything. There's language, there's science, but I'm going to scroll down to, whoops, I got to show you the tab first. There we go. Okay, so it doesn't look very exciting at first. It kind of looks like this. I'm going to scroll down to addition to 10 just so that we can show something math-wise. But these 4 games right here are the ones that are free. There are more further down, but you have to have a subscription for it. But these ones you don't. This one is actually brand new, this Feed the Shark one. But I also really like this one because you get to dress up this monster really cool. I'll show this one, but the Feed the Shark one is good too. But basically, I'm going to hit play and start. So there's this monster guy, and you get to, I don't know, I'm going to give him a mustache. And then it gives me a math question. If I get it wrong, then it tells me I'm not correct right away. But if I get it right, it throws a funny mustache on our monster guy. I use it a lot in classrooms, and they actually really, really enjoy it. So if you're looking for something at home, it's called Pink Cat Games. No idea why it's called that. Don't ask me. But it's really neat. So I'll throw this back up here. That's all that I pretty much have for you tonight. I know that was a lot of information. I did a lot of talking. I feel like I talked kind of fast, but hopefully that's okay and you understood what I was getting at. So we talked about what they learned at school, but I don't want you to worry too much about that. We talked about what's important, how to redefine success, what you can do at home, how you can find math anywhere, and that social emotional learning aspect of just having a positive attitude and mindset towards math. My contact information is at the bottom there. If you ever wanted to reach out, you can email me, you can call me. I can see if there's anything cool and exciting you guys could do with your kids at home. But yeah, hopefully that was informational and interesting for you, and you got to practice a little bit of math tonight too. Thank you both for coming.
So Laura, what I was thinking, since we had 2 great families participate, we'll give the door prize to Megan and her family. And Michelle, I'm actually coming to Sioux Lookout for a board meeting on the 17th of June. I'll make sure that you guys get a little something as well, a little math treat basket for your family. So we'll make sure that you both have something. So Laura, will you take care of getting Megan her gift? And Michelle, when I come up in June, I'll drop something off at the school and I'll have Emily or Darren give you a call then.
Oh, thank you very much. That's very kind. We're very excited about trying the Nurdle.
Yes, I do it every day. I love it.
Perfect.
And Megan, I'll be in touch and I'll get you your prize for coming tonight. Thank you both for coming. I know that was a good length of time that you listened to me talk for, but thank you for coming.
Thank you. Great information.